We're LinkedIn Live-a-thon, and this is very first time I've done this event, and this is just an opportunity for bringing across experts from different areas, different backgrounds. And Sweta, you and I actually have done a LinkedIn Live together, and I've been following you for a while. I'm a huge fan. You have a huge following on LinkedIn, and you've been helping the job seeker market for such a long time. And when I first put together this event, I kind of listed out, here are the topics I want to talk about, and this is one. Overcoming a devastating layoff. And there's so many people in today's job market who are going through this right now. And it was pre-COVID, during COVID, maybe recent, could have been just before the holidays, which is just, piling on the devastation. And when I showed you the lineup, I said, what would you be most interested in speaking about? And you said, well, I think, I've got some background in this that I'd like to share. So before we jump into this conversation on, getting into that mindset that you need to be as a job seeker, but why don't you take a few minutes, tell us a little bit about who you are and your background for those folks who aren't following you yet.
Absolutely. Hey, everybody. I don't know how many people are watching us, but it's great to be I think I'm cut off. Let's see.
Oh, let me just keep us to wide view there. There we go. I'll keep us there.
Perfect. All right. So it's great to be here Saturday morning and being part of this, series. And I wouldn't be anywhere else. Brenda said, you know what? I think this is it. Let's do it. And I'm here for Brenda today. And for all of you guys. Now, I used to be, I am from corporate world, pure corporate world. I worked there for more than 19 years. And out of that, I was hiring manager for more than 12 years. And after that, I got laid off. And I completely have sympathy and empathy for all those people, especially if you're blindsided and you don't know, it's coming, or maybe you had kind of hunch that it's coming. My situation was, it was mixed emotions. I was happy that I'm not there anymore because I was bored. I got the severance package and I got to reflect myself. But if you're blindsided, then it's going to be extremely painful. And I was laid off in 1 minute over the phone after working there for 12 years, and you could feel it, right? But I completely understand where you're coming from. I now teach. I'm a consultant at Teaching Do, founder and CEO. After that, I bounced back, and then I resigned from the corporate world. I said, this is it. I can't deal with this anymore. So now I actually teach laid off professionals and then also newcomers in Canada, because personally, I've walked on their shoes.
Yeah, and you know that background that people are coming from, and it's so important. We're talking today about overcoming a career transition, not by choice, overcoming a devastating layoff, if you will, and the impact that can have on people. So what I'm going to do now is, as I'm just going to turn the floor over to you, and I'll come back in at Q&A at the end, but I really just wanted to give the floor to you so you can share your insights and strategies with folks that are watching, and then I'll help to facilitate our Q&A at the end here. So okay. People watching, there may be people watching that are, they've recently, and you talked about that situation, they just got the phone call. It might have happened in a Zoom setting or a GoToMeeting or one of those. It's one day you're a part of the team and you're contributing and you're wording, and it's, blood, sweat, and tears going into helping the company. And then the next day you're not. And that's absolutely devastating. So what advice do you have for folks that are going through this right now?
Okay, so my case was over the phone. There was, HR and one of the VP, and then I was kind of hoping that they were actually giving me something else, some different role, because there was a mass exit. And then when I heard layoff, I was like, okay, I was relieved on it, right? So it didn't hit me right there. I was kind of happy. So, but then I want you to understand, though, even though you're burnt out from the job, or even though you feel like, you know what, I wanted to look somewhere else, when someone cuts you off, you kind of feel you're rejected, and you feel it a little bit later, not the same day, although you probably hated your job, although you love the job, whatever it is, the emotions are going to be so raw, it does not hit you right away. And it's coming from a lot of clients that I work through, and they first initial stage, they say to me is, I'm going to be okay. And then when we set up a sessions and everything, they put it on pause and they say, things are out of control. My emotions are running high. I can't deal with this right now. Let's put the pause on our sessions. And, I've seen that a trend now. People don't react right away. And it comes that after a couple of days for some people, a couple of weeks later, it could be even lingering in there forever and ever. So I think with me, it came in after a couple of weeks because I thought that I'm going to be okay. I can bounce back, but it hit me. Why? The why keeps on coming back. And I wanted to talk about that. If you are watching me because you've been in the same situation, type it in there, and tell me if you feel exactly the same thing, which is like, I keep on hearing this, like, in my brain, it's like, why me? Why do I not have a job? But there are people out there, they were not good at what they do. They are there, kind of thing, right? Does that keep on coming back to me, coming back to you? And it kept on coming back to me. Then I had to put the plan together. So what happens is, there's a first step I want you to take in. As soon as the layoff hits you, you know that you have that paper served to you. You got to go out there and get the legal advice. You love the company. I don't care whatever you do. Maybe you're paid out generously. I don't care. Get the legal advice. Are you getting the right severance amount? Are you treated fairly? A lot of companies, why are they giving you layoff? Is cost cutting reductions, right? So you want to make sure that you're entitled to all those severance package. There are laws in place. It depends on your age. It depends on your background. It depends on your title. If you're executive, if you're in a leadership role, if the jobs are not really out there, and it depends on what kind of city you live in. Those are all calculated. There's no hard and fast rule. There's a bare minimum requirement in each and every state that employer has to match it. Bare minimum. And that's what the employer is going to do to you. They're going to say, okay, we're going to just meet the bare minimum requirement. And you know what? We're going to wait. If the person comes back to me legally, then, come to us legally, then we're going to go back and negotiate. They want you to come back. It's just like a salary negotiation, guys. Do not ever take the first one. I had a couple of people who went back personally. Hey, I think I deserve more. Here's why: because they didn't want to go with the legal route, because they didn't want to burn the bridge. I had some people who actually went with the legal route and did a lot of homework and got much out of it. And you know what? You got to go there and do the research, because you have to take care of yourself. Your bills are not going to stop. You got to take care of that first. And the second step is obviously to make sure that all those fixed income that you have mortgage going on, you have rent going on for those people who are renting, right? The mortgage is not going to be, banks are not going to be saying, well, you don't have a job, I'm not going to want my money. So there are programs in place for people, like you can defer the mortgage for 2 to 3 months, or you can increase the amortizations as well, which is if you're on a 25, 30 years plan, then because you paid so much, you can contact your bank and say, hey, can you increase my AM so my payments are low? So think about all those adjustments before you start actually even going back to the job, because if you start focusing on job search, your finances, who's going to take care of that? Because it's going to take a toll on your life. So, and then cost cutting, where you can cut the cost. Try to make sure that you focus on that as well. So that way you can fully, now when you're ready to go back in a job search world, then you can go and fully focus on it. And my concern to laid off people all the time is please, please, please breathe. You've done a lot of work, hard work. You don't have to go back right away unless you have to, unless you must. Take a chill pill, heal. Because if you keep on asking why, if you have not closed that chapter, it's going to be so hard for you to move on. And it's going to come across whenever you talk about your past employer, whenever you talk about your boss, it's going to come in interview. When they're going to ask you, oh, what happened? Then you know what? There's a technique you got to go. But a lot of people, when they're laid off, they rant about their ex-employer. They rant about their bosses. And to me, it tells me that they've not healed properly, right? And there's a strategy. Like you got to go to interview thinking that, you know what? I was laid off. That's totally fine. I learned so much from that role. Here I am to actually bring those experience from here to here. And the layoff happened because of COVID, right? And you know what? I'm blessed. I'm here right now going to the market. And because I have so much experience from the previous world, I can bring this, and talk about your accomplishment, right? The minute you start to go into like stick to minimum. You were laid off, COVID-19. You don't have to give none of the details. Don't feel guilty. And it's going to come up. So heal properly and go from there, right? So Brenda, if you're there, if you have any questions, let me know coming in. So I see Mary says, I feel the same feeling of rejection. I was traumatized. I made myself relevant all the time. I did receive the severance package, which is better than nothing. NYC at 12. Okay, well, good. I mean, so as long as, there's a law in place, right? Like, especially people who are laid off, those are tenure folks, and they've earned that severance. The company's not doing you a favor, guys, right? And I want you to understand this. First of all, it's not personal. It's all business. Company's going to pay you less amount possible, right? There's a reason you're out because you're probably a higher paid staff. They don't want to continue pay, but they would rather hire someone else new where they can hire on a lower salary, right? So treat them as they're in for business. There's nothing personal. Close that chapter. The other thing after that, how do you bounce back now is, right, have a plan, because now without having a plan, it's going to be very difficult for especially the tenure folks to go back to the market, because we've been in the situation where you've been hanging around in a corporate world for so long, all your networks are in the corporate world. But what happens when everyone's there with your past employer and you have nobody outside? So that's when you got to look into it and see who is it from that company that earlier that who was moved out, right? Maybe those people were laid off as well. And if you know someone like that within your industry who are laid off from their previous company, how do they bounce back? Try to have chit chat with the same kind of people who went through the same emotions, and trust me, it helps you a lot, because at this time, you need that you're not alone on this one. Surround yourself with the same kind of people who are going to be motivated and, together, do this together. And we kind of did that. We're so many people, there are 9 or 10 people, they actually, we were all laid off at the same time, and we connected and bonded so well. They were taking courses, and then if I miss it, they would be coming back to me and saying, do you take these courses? It's really good, right? You need buddies like that, accountability buddies as well, to support one another. Plus, you're in the pool of group that you don't feel like, oh my God, I'm alone and I'm doing it myself, because trust me, you need those support. It's one thing that you have a support from family and friends, which is good. They have a good intention, but to get advice from them, it's probably not recommended, because you're going to be more confused now. First, your marketing plan needs to be clean and clear. Research where do you want to go step by step. Do the SWOT analysis on you. What are your strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities and threat, right? And then start to identify your niche. And a lot of people, whether it's tenure versus zero experience, a lot of people are not clear on their niche market. And employers are looking for a niche market. And these tenure folks, the problem they have is they have that attitude, including me. I had the same thing. I'm jack of all. I can do all the jobs I could. That's a problem we all have, especially the people who are just laid off after so many years, because we've done so much. We feel like I can do this, I can rock and roll. Employers are not looking for it, and you're not clear on your goal as well. So you got to sit down and see, I can do this, but what's a core responsibility I was really good at? Can I match 80 to 90% on rock and roll, right? And you got to build your brand from there. You got to speak about that more often. When people actually talk to you, they know that you're expert on that one. Jack and Jill. With the tenure folks and laid off worker, it's not going to work. The next step, guys, be tech savvy. And, we all have weaknesses, right? We've always worked in the environment where we start thinking about, we've always done this way and it worked for me, right? But it might not work for you. After COVID, there are so many people, they're moving into the online platform, more technical. Even the interviews now are AI. Are you comfortable talking in a video? My clients I get right now is they're sending the recorded interview. They're not even like meeting HR after, like it's going to happen after 4, a round of interviews. First is a pre-screening online. There's a personality test. There's a simulation test. And there's a recorded interview there. You're going to get 2 minutes or so. And then only if you pass all those 4 or 5 screening tests, then you're going out there and talking to the human. Are you comfortable? Right? So a lot of laid off folks are, again, not comfortable because they're not used to those technical, the aspect of their life. Are you adaptable, right? So you got to reflect on yourself and see what are the things I could do differently going forward that I was not better at it. I want to be better at it. Start working those on your weaknesses. So when you're competing with the millennials out there, keep in mind, you could be 40, you could be reporting to 25 years old. Are you comfortable being coached? Right? And I had issues when I went back to the workforce. I'm like talking to this high school graduated who just became a leader who had no idea about the coaching, and I'm getting coached. And I'm like, man, I'm in the coaching world for so long. These people are coaching, and I had to suck my ego down. So, and I'm speaking from my experience, you gotta go out there and be adaptable to bounce back, because if you have that attitude of, I've done it all, I can rock and roll, you know what? It's not going to fly by. Hopefully that makes sense, guys. Let me see if there's any comments. Absolutely, Eleanor. You said, tell the story of where you want to go rather than where you had been. Know what you want. That's perfect example. And we all talk about it. All the coaches out there, they agree to it. If you guys are watching me, they're like, stop talking about result-oriented, detail-oriented. I could care less. Show me how you got the result, right? And that's why you got to talk about it. This is a time you got to brag about it. If you don't brag about yourself, no one's going to do that for you guys.
Yeah, this has been such great discussion, Sweta. I've been watching the whole thing, and I actually like bringing people up in large screen view because they can kind of focus on you and really just let you have the floor for the discussion. And we've had so many great questions coming in, guys, and we're going to start to move into Q&A right now. So if you have questions for Sweta, please ask them now. And I see there were a few that came in, so I'm going to pull up a couple of those right now. And there's been a few questions about severance, and I know you're not a lawyer, Sweta, but what are your, I don't know that they are necessarily required by law to give us severance. Any thoughts on that?
I'm not a lawyer, but again, I'll tell you what, always go, doesn't matter. Always go and find out your options. And there are lawyers out there, by the way, they give you free consultations. And if you, free consultations, no obligations, always hunt that down. Even there should be a website on US as well. What province requires, how old are you? They should automatically calculate it online. So Google it and find it. And there's going to be a lawyer, you can hire them. And if they charge you for 1 hour consultation, like $300, $400, if you go with them, they will waive that fee as well. Try to find those lawyers. Yeah.
And same thing. I'm not going to put Sweta on the spot here because I think these are legal questions. Talk to a lawyer. I mean, there are employment or employer, I guess, attorney related categories out there. So you ask around. You can ask a friend who is a lawyer. They may be able to refer you to somebody who specializes in employment law and to help you out with that. But the focus really of this session is how to get into a positive mindset if you've gone through a devastating layoff. And one question, and I see a couple people asking this, is how do we discuss this in an interview, Sweta, where somebody's saying, oh, I see a gap in your resume, or, I don't know if it's brought up like that, but how do you bring it up? Do you bring it up in an interview?
Absolutely. So you know what, with me and even my client, I coach them whenever I work very closely with a laid off worker, career professionals, and that's where people struggle to explain. And you don't have to say it all. If you focus on that, layoff, then what can of worms gonna just, be opening. So the way I would answer it is before they even ask. So tell me about yourself. Tell me about yourself questions, right? I would say, I've done this, I've made $1 million for company, all those formula, right? You go in there and you know what, unfortunately my role was eliminated. And I was just bouncing back, and it took me probably a couple of months to get the right employer. Here I am actually today. So let's talk about what we can mutually benefit with, and just smile. That's it. So you've just given it away before they're asking about gaps. So don't let them ask for gap, own it, and then go from there. That's it.
Great. So someone else had a question. what is a SWOT? I know what it is because I'm a marketer. This is like ingrained in our brain when we go through marketing classes, but some folks may be watching this and saying, SWOT? Is that like swatting a fly? What is she talking about? So
They're like, this is something I go through with my client when I initially take them. That's a part of my marketing plan document. So what I like, a lot of people, and especially job seeker, whether you're a newcomer or laid off worker, I realized personally too, like I did not identify my strength and weaknesses and opportunity and threat on the area of marketing, on the area that I wanted to target, right? So you got to go out there and find out who you are. That's your strength, what you can bring in, and the weaknesses that you can modify, or is there a potential way for you to change it? And then there's a saying, I believe in this, like if you just talk about weaknesses, people are going to hear about weaknesses. How about you hide the weaknesses with the strength? Right. Being self-aware is the key. Know where are your weaknesses, but how do you modify that into the strength? It's a whole new strategy. So now opportunities, right, and threat is something that you can't control. It's external. Strength and weaknesses you can control, it's up to you, but opportunities and threat is all the external factors that you cannot control, but you can do something about it. Your role, for example, right? You're probably living in the smaller city, the opportunities are not there. That's not on your control, but how do you bounce around that and create the opportunity for yourself, right? The threat, the threat that, it could come in that role. So COVID-19, are you adaptable? The company's adaptable. If it's not about adaptable, then are you the one who is going to be innovator? Are you going to be the one who's like, give me I'm going to roll with it. Otherwise I have no innovation strategy, right? There are so many things I teach, but again, if you Google SWOT, and there should be a link as well. I provide the link to my client as well. DM me and I can send you the link of SWOT, like what I'm talking about.
That'd be great. And that actually might be something, if you want to give me that link, I'll provide that in the free resources for people who register.
Perfect. Yeah.
So for those of you who maybe are joining a little bit late, this is a LinkedIn Live-a-thon. I'm doing this all day long. And you don't need to register. You can just come and watch this. You can come and watch us. We're on LinkedIn, we're on Facebook, we're on YouTube. But if you want to get the resources that each of the speakers are talking about, I'm going to be sending out an email afterwards, but you have to opt in to get it. So I created a webpage, mellermarketing.com/LIL subscribe, little subscribe. It actually stands for LinkedIn Live subscribe. So if you go to that and you opt in, you'll get the resources from the speakers, information about the speaker. So if you want to follow up with Sweta, learn more about her services and how she can help you, and that SWOT list that you just mentioned, definitely go check out that site. So I did see something else in comments, and we're talking about getting into a positive mindset. And I really like this person's point of view, and I want to throw it up on screen, and then I want to see, Sweta, if you have anything additional to offer. As a LinkedIn user, it's kind of like the gray avatar. So you may have your privacy settings set up in a way where we can't see who you are. But the person is saying, if you're going through this devastating layoff, write down what you are feeling. I love this. Write down what you're feeling. Then crumple it up or tear it off and throw it away. Maybe even you've got a fireplace, throw it in the fireplace, right? So thoughts on that, Sweta, or other techniques? How do you got to feel the feelings you're having, but then you got to release them, right? And move on. What are your thoughts there?
I like that. And I think there's I think a lot of people, there are culture thing as well. People do actually, Brenda, there's some culture, they actually do it, stuff that you don't like to see it anymore, write it down and crumble and flush it down. So that way it doesn't come out at all. And I've done that, not particularly when I was laid off, but I've done that previously. Again, I remember myself, after 2 weeks or so, I just started crying. I locked up my door and I just something hit me. I don't know what it was. I started crying and I was like, why is it happening to me, right? And I couldn't control my emotions. I cried like crazy. I couldn't care less. Luckily, I was alone, but again, let it go, because if you don't let it go, it's gonna be hard. You can't suppress the emotions. You have to let it go. Mm-hmm. The other thing I know that I talked about a lot is volunteering, giving back, and I even booked one-way ticket and volunteered, back home where I'm from Nepal, and I volunteered there. I went and taught, and it made me realize I'm so blessed. So what? I don't have a job. I can eat. I have roof. I have water. So when you compare yourself with the people who are at the bottom level, they're struggling. They don't even have a basic need. Here you have roof. You just don't have a job. But hey, you know what? You can be okay. And start thinking about someone else who's below you and compare it instead of looking someone on a social media who's posting the BMW all the time, right? It's all in your mindset, I would think. It starts with you. Being positive starts with you, and no one can tell you be positive if you don't feel it here and here.
I love it. Such a great, and I'm a huge person on positive mindset, Sweta, so I completely agree with you in so many of these areas. And I want to, as we start to wrap up the conversation, first of all, hey, Clarine, how are you today?
Hello.
We're kind of going live from person to person. So what I'm doing is I'm bringing the next person in so we don't have any disruption of the broadcast. We're going to keep going, but we'll just have you hang out for a minute while we finish up with Sweta here. And I pulled up on the screen your LinkedIn URL, Sweta, and I think you're kind of at the max limit for connections, aren't you? So people have to follow you at this point on LinkedIn, is that right?
Right. And I'm just like, accepting the people in Canada right now because I fully focus in Canada. But if you're in Canada, you have some questions, feel free to send me message and I have open message.
Okay, great. And if you guys do want to connect with Sweta on LinkedIn, rather, if you want to follow her on LinkedIn, go to her profile. There's a follow button. Following is pretty similar to connecting. The only thing you can't do is one-to-one messages. But when you follow, you will start to see her updates in your homepage feed. And I guarantee she is someone you want to follow. She's one of my LinkedIn rock stars, and she's in the 100K plus list. I think you're at 162,000 followers. So really great content out on there. Keep up the great work. Any final comments for the group here today? Anything you'd like to mention before we wrap up?
No, I think I saw one comment I wanted to address to it. Jay Jack actually said, "Tell us something that you converted weakness into the strength." And I wanted to tell you, I had huge issue insecurity when it came to communication from the corporate world. It kept on coming. I kept on getting coached, and during my when I was laid off. I literally started writing content. I didn't care about the grammar police. I just went on. And with me right now, you're seeing me talking live and going on live and having my YouTube channel. I killed my insecurity, my weakness to the strength by overdoing it. So here I am, immigrant woman born in Nepal, and again, coming in Canada, leading in the corporate world, now to CEO and founder. So my weakness was the communication. I've turned that around into strength. So overdo it, kill it.
I love your confidence. I love your positivity. And you are such a good reminder. We all are going through, tough things, and we can overcome that. And what I love about your story too is you've gone through you've experienced these challenges firsthand. You've learned from it, you've grown from it, and you've been able to turn that into positive energy. So I just want to say thank you so much, Sweta. I really enjoyed the conversation. I know your time is very precious because you're so busy these days, but I just want to thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much for inviting. I wish you guys all the best, and you have fantastic coach. Put the action plan away, and if you have any questions, reach out to me.